It's very frustrating, but the good news is the Dandenong Journal does still exist, and I'm told it's here in the library. It's the only written account I've heard of from the period, so it's really precious.
Westall High School students.
Something obviously happened. Some people apparently didn't want the kids talking about it, and that raises all sorts of questions. Why couldn't it have been discussed? Why couldn't it have been talked about openly? And why couldn't anybody find any more information about what it was?
The headmaster, Frank Sambleby, is a key part of the story. He's passed away, but I hope his children, Max and Gail, can shed some light on his behaviour.
Hello, Shane here. Anybody home?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Max? Nice to meet
Hi.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
He played 50 games for the Hawthorn Football Club. He was a half-back flanker, and in those days half-back flankers ran in straight lines, and that's what he did.
He was pretty black and white, and he had a very strong sense of right and wrong, and yeah, if it didn't fit in with what he believed, then yeah, he found it quite difficult.
And this thing would have been seen as something that was disrupting the smooth operation of the school.
And he would have been a sceptic as well. I mean, he didn't believe in supernatural things. He believed in the real life, didn't he? You know, when we were kids, there was a picture on the wall of a Roman soldier standing, holding his spear, and the lava was all falling down from Pompeii, and people in the background were all crouching and running. And Dad said, "See, he's standing there doing his duty." And, you know, that, I mean, as children, we had to learn that discipline was important, respect, all those things, all the old values. And, yeah, he found it really hard as things changed he was pretty judgmental.
There was plenty for Frank Sambleby to be judgmental about. In the 1960s, rebellion at home and on the streets brought many young people into conflict with the establishment. Schools were run like the military, and teachers demanded respect and obedience. Westall High was no exception. I tried to contact some of the teachers, but many have passed away. As far as I know, only the science teacher, Andrew Greenwood, saw the object in the air. Although he's spoken with me privately, he refuses to go on the public record. Several teachers dismissed the whole thing as mass hysteria. The response left students feeling confused and conflicted. Some are still searching for answers.
I want to find some sort of proof that this happened, so we don't keep on, you know, getting called silly people. And, you know, no one's ever wanted to know the details before. They just think I'm stupid, and, you know, they don't want to know the story. I said, I've seen UFOs or flying saucers, and they say, yeah, sure. What drugs were you on that day? And, you know, I was 13 years old. I was at school in the daytime. I wasn't on any drugs.
Slowly you start to drift. I'd like you to visualize the area that we've discussed before. You're in the classroom. You're with Mr. Greenwood, who was the teacher there. There's a little fella comes running around and says, there are flying saucers outside, flying saucers outside. Everybody laughed. And Mr. Greenwood said, come on then, let's have a look. See yourself running down the Eiffel.
We're all affected by our experiences that aren't ever properly acknowledged or accepted. As a boy, I was living in a fairly unhappy home. My own father had died, so my mother had remarried and had given me a stepfather that I'd never asked for. I was quite powerless, and no one really seemed to understand what I was experiencing as a child. I never really had anyone talk to me about it. Just having it acknowledged that what I was going through was real, that would have been a start.
1, 2, 3.
Even though I know it's true, the more I try to see it again, the harder it becomes, I think. I can see bodies, but I can't see people. Faces, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I can still see the trees and the...
Yeah, and the things.
It was... yeah.
The feelings don't go away. They just get buried and they sort of fester a little bit.
I saw the classroom for the first time, and then I saw heads bobbing, walking across the oval towards the end of the school ground, and then there they were. Still not 100% clear, but I know what they are. They're UFOs.
If they were UFOs, there should be people around the area who can corroborate what the students saw. A headmaster might be able to shut down a high school, but surely not a whole suburb. Within days of delivering my flyers, I'm contacted by a new witness, Paul Smith, who used to work on a property next door to the Grange.
We were loading up for market, and as we were pulling the carrots up, I looked up and I was facing the object in the sky, and I just thought, oh, somebody's got some way of projecting a film of something into the sky. I didn't believe that it was really happening. But my boss turned around and he saw it, and we stood there looking at it for several minutes. A few moments later, the children came over from the high school and they noticed us, they saw us, and they sort of took a while to make up their mind whether they would come onto the property, realising it's private property.
Yes.
And they decided they'd come in anyway, and they did. They ran straight over the market garden, and they crossed and walked down here to this corner. After a while, trucks turned up with, it looked like army trucks.
Right.
And there would have been about 20 guys got out.
About how long after the object had vanished in the trees?
Oh, I think it was only 20 minutes, which is not a long time.
How did you know they were from the army?
Well, they were khaki-coloured trucks, the covered in patches, you know, sort of that they to hide, you know.
Like camouflage?
Camouflage truck, yeah. And it was the long ones that carry quite a few people, and a couple of jeeps.
So a couple of trucks,
and
a couple of jeeps, and about 20 men in uniforms?
Yeah.
And the uniforms were what sort of uniforms?
Just khaki-coloured uniform.
Just khaki?
Yeah.
No other, don't remember any other sort
Not
of...
that I can remember, no.
Colours or...
No.
I went looking for a military expert. If the army was able to turn up in just 20 minutes, where could they possibly have come from?
It's quite evident that there was no deployable troops available in Melbourne at the time. The main units were all logistic, the supply battalions and so forth at places like Broadmeadows. There were lots of citizen military forces, today's equivalent of the Army Reserve, part-time units, but they couldn't have responded so rapidly, and nor could they have responded in such a large number. I've come to the conclusion that the first people to respond to the incident at Westall would have been civilians of some sort, quasi-civilians, probably working for defence, and probably wearing the sort of work dress that civilians working for, say, the Department of Supply, say, the research and development establishments of the period, the sort of work dress that those personnel wore.
I discovered that other people in uniform were seen in the area on the day of the sighting. Les Medju went to the Grange with his younger sister, but they saw what seemed to be a different unit.
We hid behind this tree, but fortunately this tree, the branches came down to the ground. Here we are, crouched down on our knees, and we can only look every so often as this tractor came around. He was on guard duty. This was a farmer who's decided to help out. We observed 2 army trucks, 2 men in the camouflage, and 2 men in blue uniforms.
We better cover this area.
And it appeared that a soldier was using a metal mine detector. He's walking around sweeping back and forth.
Keep down. They'll see
The
us.
next time I see them, they turned and they started kicking violently at the ground. The 2 officers decide then, time to come back. They come back to the truck and they were gone, and then we could enter the paddock.
Les.
We had no idea what we'd all walked into. We didn't know what those army men were doing, and all I can say, it was just, what is this? To have the army there and all the rest of it, it was something important.
They certainly were not Australian, because Australians were not using camouflage uniforms in those days, in the mid-60s. Nor would they have been British. But the description of the uniforms certainly matches those worn by the United States Air Force in the mid-1960s.
There were American military and intelligence personnel in Australia in 1966 as part of the Vietnam War effort. The Cold War between the USA and the Soviet Union was in full swing, extending across the world and even into outer space.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
The space race between the superpowers fueled the public imagination at all levels.
Flying saucers have invaded our planet. Washington, London, Paris.
The fascination with flying saucers persisted all over the world. Australia was no exception.
Well, so far, I haven't seen anything even vaguely resembling a flying saucer or even a flying cigar. But thousands of people, in fact millions, do believe they exist. What do you think they are?
They are real, anyway. They come from the other planets. Some of them might come from the centre of the Earth.
I haven't seen one close up yet. This is what I'm looking forward to one day.
Yeah, you took a step towards the figures and the object.
We used to invite people who reported sightings to talk about the experience, because if the sighting was a dramatic one, they would feel, I just need to talk to somebody. But if I discuss it with my friends, they say, what have you been drinking? But they needed to talk to somebody who would take them seriously.
Although society members tried to investigate at Westall, they came up against a wall of silence. All they can now find in their files is a couple of photographs and a sighting report filled in at the time by one of my student witnesses, Joy Tai. They also went to Moorabbin Airport to look for the pilots of the aircraft that apparently chased the UFO, but nobody came forward. I decided to do my own investigation. I contacted a retired air traffic controller to find out how a UFO and several light planes could fly so close to each other without a report being made. Who was responsible for controlling the airspace?
Moorabbin Tower was responsible for the area within a 5-mile radius of Moorabbin and up to 3,000 feet. And above that, it was the responsibility of Essendon Approach. If you're in a tower, you have the aircraft in sight all the time. 5 aircraft on the edge of the airspace, 5 by the way, in broad daylight, they should have been able to see. They may have found something that they thought shouldn't be made public and therefore hushed up.
There is evidence that the American government wanted to stifle debate about UFOs. They set up a committee to objectively investigate UFOs.